One and all, yet again to another exciting session of Time's Ascent. I am Avik Das and will be moderating this session for the next 1 hour. The topic today is extremely pertinent: building a happy and a healthy workforce, more so at a time when for nearly a year now, a large portion of that workforce across sectors is working from home. Longer working hours, fatigue, balancing work and family life are some of the most common problems that have emerged when people are working from home, with organizations trying to find out how to keep its workforce motivated and happy in these trying and tested times. We have with us three esteemed panelists who will be able to throw further light on this. There is Sapan Shrimal, who is the director at specialized consulting firm Monk at Work. Now, Sapan has a rich experience in the field of leadership development and cultural transformation, coupled with long practice and study in mindfulness. Having closely worked with people across multiple cultures and continents, he brings unique insights into workplace behavior. Welcome, Sapan, on the panel.
Thanks, Avik.
Thank you. Great to have you with us, Sapan. Next, there is Aditi Raghuram, who is an organizational psychologist and senior advisor for workplace wellness firm SumUp in Berlin. Now, she has experience spanning across North America, Europe, and Asia. As a senior advisor for workplace wellness, she advises organizations on employee well-being solutions designed to strategically build organizational well-being by aligning leadership and culture with employee well-being outcomes. Great to have you with us today, Aditi.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And finally, we have Augustus Azaria, who's the Associate Director of Human Resources at IBM. Augustus has more than 25 years of experience in human resources. He continues to be passionate about people development. He finds this most rewarding and exciting because people are so very different with varied needs and aspirations. And it's always a constant challenge to align people's desires to corporate goals and strategies. Welcome, Augustus. So great to have you with us.
Thank you. Truly delighted to be here.
Absolutely, my pleasure to greet all of you today. It's going to be really a packed and exciting session. I'm pretty sure about it. Let's begin. And maybe the first question I'll probably throw to Sapan. Facing how to balance between desires and happiness. If you can, just throw some light. Maybe facing the reality of the current position, how to deliver the most.
Okay, and if I am right, Avik, I think when you are saying desire, I think there is a lot of desire inside us, and when they don't get fulfilled, obviously it creates unhappiness. So how do we balance that? We have desires, and there is happiness as well. Am I right? Yeah.
Correct.
I think there is a lot of talk about having possibly low desires, higher happiness. We should not or have lesser desires. I would take a contrarian view rather, and it's possibly not about balancing desires and happiness, but possibly fine-tuning. Desires can be a source of happiness. I think when Aditi is working on the wellness and leadership, and Augustus is working on developing his workforce, I think the desire that they come out with, it possibly gives them a great boost, motivation, work towards. If I think of helping possibly 1 million people with mindfulness and uplifting their life, the desire actually possibly becomes the seed for happiness. I think, again, as we said, it's about fine-tuning. If the desire is something which is connected with our living life meaningfully, it actually leads to happiness. But if it is more about the vanity, okay, then it is not. That's the first part. But I think again, possibly it may sound a bit philosophical, but I must say that finding our right desires is actually the first key to happiness. But even for our day-to-day desires, I mean, we would want to have a great car, we would want to have a great house, and absolutely nothing wrong in that. We should have that. But important part is to actually enjoy the chase. We know all the Bollywood romantic movies, love stories, all the love stories end with the chase, happily live thereafter. The joy is in the chase. Nobody shows the married life life afterwards. Yeah, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately. Yeah, but the chase, when we are actually trying to achieve our goals, our dreams, every step is such fun. There's so much of excitement and exhilaration in that. The more we are aware and um, enjoying those moments of chase, nothing like that.
Got it. Got it. Aditi or Augustus, anybody want to have a go at this before I move on to the next set of questions?
I just want to say, yeah, I absolutely agree with Sapan. He said it was philosophical, but I would also add to it and say it's not just philosophical. There's also science that backs this, right? So as long as we are living our lives through the lens of our values, who we want to be rather than what we want to do or what we want to achieve, and as long as we're driven from the inside, our motivation comes from, what kind of life do I want to live and what kind of meaning do I want to get from my life? Then your desires will absolutely lead you to your happiness, if you will. But I also have to say, I don't really like the term happiness so much because happiness is a very episodic kind of thing. I like the word joy better because it comes from the inside, you're joyful. Whereas people think, I need to be happy at all times, but that's just not possible for human beings to do. And that's where we sort of get disillusioned because our expectations don't meet reality. And so I think setting expectations is really key. Like Sapan said, fine tuning and set your expectations in a way that aligns with the life that you want to lead, as opposed to saying, I want to be happy all the time. Let's leave that for Facebook.
Great, great. Augustus, one simple question. I'll start off with you. You know, it might seem pretty easy, might seem difficult, but facing the reality of the current situation, at a time when the pandemic has struck, a lot of how do you really keep your workforce motivated? There may be a situation in which is pretty common in the last year that salaries were reduced, retrenchments were done. Considering if I take a position of a guy whose salary has been reduced drastically, and you still expect that person to be motivated and to show up every day and work with the same level of enthusiasm, what do you think the organization should do to keep that person motivated and to get the maximum productivity out of him or her?
Yeah, let me answer that question in a couple of parts. Okay, so I think the first thing here that the organization needs to understand for the remote employee is that, look, we have a new house guest, and that is our office. Okay, so let's be mindful of the fact that we are in somebody's home. One. Two, enablement. The person who's working remote needs to be enabled with the right set of tools and technology. Given some things like, does the person have an ergonomic chair, a desk, okay, earphones, headphones, okay? These are some of the things that organizations should do because it is what I call the duty of care, okay? Then the managers or supervisors, they need to be mindful as well as sensitive to people's time. Sometimes, it is taken that people are available. And we'll have to recognize the fact that people have other things to do and they have certain timings. And within those timings, there is office time. And everybody is not going to be camera ready. So have the sensitization in terms of how you talk to people and don't force people when they're not ready for it. Okay, these are some of the lessons I learned, okay, in the last nine months or so. And how do I use technology, okay, to ensure that he or she is engaged? I have periodic pulse surveys that are going in. Our managers sensitize to us the right set of questions. Can we look at social and sentiment analytics to understand the engagement levels of our workforce? In terms of what they write on social media or they tweeting, are there any indicators, signals? And last but not least, emotional well-being and physical well-being are today on the CHRO's table? Thanks. Can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
I get that portion where you say that, the physical and the emotional well-being is extremely important. It's right on the top in a CHRO stable. The organization needs to provide employees with the right set of tools and everything. I'm just wondering, I, I'm in a situation where my salary has been drastically reduced, let's say 40%, and I have to deliver because, of course, there is the fear of also losing the job. I am probably thankful that I didn't lose the job. I only had my salary cut. How do I keep myself motivated and keep working with the same level of enthusiasm for the, let's say, for the foreseeable future?
Yeah.
There is no certainty that my salary would be rolled back. How do I keep myself motivated there?
I think for those who are taking a salary cut, the way it should happen is in a very transparent manner. It is not, it is very fair, in the sense that, okay, the top management gets so much lopped off, the middle management or lower management's got to be transparent so that, the entire ecosystem or the environment or the workforce knows, okay, we're all in this together. So when you're all in this together is about driving teamwork in it, okay? Saying, look, we have this huge tsunami in front of us, and we have to take this cut for us to ride the storm. It's better than being out of job, at a time like this, because along with, a salary cut, you at least have insurance and various other benefits that will help you ride the storm. See, it's about telling people that I know this is going to be a pinch on your pocket, but we'll all have to take this as a sacrifice. We have to make a challenge. There needs to be this resurgent war cry and strong leadership that enables people to work together as a team. And unless you have strong engagement, you will not do this. But undergirding that is recognition. So while somebody is down at whatever percentage of a salary cut, you need to recognize that that person's output is not 40%, but 110%. Thank you.
Got it. Sapan, you want to also take a shot at this? How would you probably would have addressed that?
So I'm with Augustus and especially when he says duty of care. When we're looking from organization side, I think the two things, care, I think, and care is not just a word. I think even if the salary cut has happened and the management with lot of care says, look, I mean, if we have to continue, if we have to survive, and if we don't have to lay off people, okay, that is a much harder decision. We are forced to do the salary cut, and we do care. We will do everything to restore. I know of an organization who just rolled back all the salary cuts. Rolled back in the sense they actually paid back all the salary cuts that happened that time. Okay, that shows the genuine care that it happened because of some forceful nature. But when we are able to, we will do everything. This real sense of and genuine sense of care, not just the social media care or that brownie points. It's a real care. And second is communication. And when we are talking about communication, it's not about communicating something. Obviously we got to communicate rightly, but it's more about listening. How much are we connecting with people on their emotional side? Believe me, even if there is a salary cut, and if a manager talks to this person on a one-to-one, heart-to-heart basis, understand what this person, what he or she is going through, believe me, this person would not leave the job because they know there is someone who is there to take care of me, someone who has a concern for me. Okay, and these are softer things, but human beings are emotional beings, and if you don't take care of their emotions, believe me, I mean, we just cannot do any rational work as well. Okay, just adding to the point from the person's angle. So what should the person do who has got possibly the 40% salary cut? Okay, and here again, there is no easy way out. One thing I would definitely say not to do is trying to cover up those feelings and say, okay, everything is hunky-dory, everything is fine. Okay, it is not. Okay, when somebody gets worries, I would rather suggest face it, really face it the way you are feeling it. Because I've seen the biggest problems that happens is whenever we are getting any concerning situation, the mind goes into a very turbulent situation. The amygdala goes on the overheated part, and in those situations, if you try to just give yourself a consolation and everything, believe me, it actually doubles the struggle, because the emotional turbulence was there, and on over and above we are just trying to put some surface level consolation, which does not work well. Believe me, the crossing over the whole path, when I am worried, when I am afraid, looking at that fear face to face and knowing and accepting, yes, I'm afraid, okay, and it's okay to be afraid, okay. Believe me, the turbulence level goes down, and that's where the person would come in a better position to say, okay, what do I do now? Otherwise the internal struggle would just continue.
Got it. Uh, Aditi, I also wanted to understand: is it possible to have a cheerful attitude towards everything in life? If yes, why do you think so? If not, how do you deal with that?
I think I'm just going to extend what Sapan said just now, right? It's about acknowledging your reality. It's about saying life is tough right now. I don't have my salary. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills, or how I'm going to pay my kids' school fees in 3 months because of the lowered salary. I don't know what to do in such a situation. To say, but I'm going to keep a positive attitude, like Sapan said, it doesn't work. We already know that. Otherwise, we would all be very cheerful at all times. So I think the key here is to really give yourself that acknowledgement that you're going through a tough time, to understand that everybody else is going through a tough time as well, that we're all in this together, to understand that we're all connected in this together. And it will pass. At some point, it will pass. But in the meanwhile, to really hold yourself and sort of give yourself that kind of care. So I would say, talk to yourself like you would talk to your child or to someone that you really love. You wouldn't scream at them and say, what is this? Cheer up. You just lost this big award, or you just cheer up. This is not the way. You wouldn't do that. You would give them that kindness. You would give them that support. And I think that's really important to do, because expecting that you're going to stay cheerful at all times, no matter what happens, again, you're setting yourself up for failure by doing that. So that's just not even a possibility. It's not realistic at all. We don't hear you.
Yeah. Uh, how do you actually keep your head high during all these crises? What are some of the positives? I mean, let's say, how do you think positively amidst all this crisis? There would be moments of mood swings. There would be moments or days, maybe I would be extremely depressed. I would be extremely down. How do I still ensure, I may be depressed, but life goes on. How do you ensure that I keep doing what I'm expected to do, fulfill the responsibilities, but and still maintain a bit of a positive attitude? How do you do that?
That's such a great question, because that's something I'm teaching my son. I'm teaching a lot of people in my life as well. I think what we do is we think that what we feel right now is the most important thing, which is not entirely true, right? So for example, it's very cold outside. I don't want to wake up and go for a walk. I don't feel like it. That's a voice in my head. Should I say, okay, I don't feel like it, therefore I'm not going to go? Or what I can do is also acknowledge that voice and say, I hear you. I hear that you don't want to go for a walk right now, but I'm going to do it anyway, right? Because you're keeping in mind the long-term vision of what makes your life meaningful. And this goes back to what Sapan had talked about earlier as well. As long as you're driving through that lens of what makes my life meaningful, it's easier to sustain that positive attitude and keep doing what needs to be done. But if you're going to expect all the external environment to be perfect for you to feel wonderful, and then you'll do whatever you need to do, that's not going to happen either, right? So it really is a question of, is my feeling in this moment the most important thing? Most often it's not. If you give into your feelings all the time, you're not going to do anything. So basically, I would say just mindfulness is very important. Make sure that you are aware of the thoughts that are going on in your head. Then you can catch yourself when you say, I really don't feel like it. And you can question and say, do I really not feel like it because I'm physically unable to? Or is it just because I don't like to do something? At that point, you have a choice and you can say, okay, I'm going to do it even though I don't like doing it. Or if you're really tired after a long day and you don't want to do something, then you say, you know what, I really am tired. So I'm going to be kind to myself and get some rest in some other way.
I think great points, Aditi. I think the most important thing is not to be probably too harsh on yourself in these moments. I mean, there are probably things or events that are probably beyond your control, over which you do not really, I mean, you can't be held responsible for everything that happens in your life. I mean, there's something that's really beyond your scope. Great points. I'll move over to Augustus, and this question can also be taken by Sapon. How does IBM ensure that in these long working hours where people are probably glued onto their screens for about 9 or 10 hours every day, how do you ensure that the workers stay motivated and healthy, and how do you maintain their health? I can start with Augustus, and then Sapon can take over.
Sure. Good question. Very relevant, or that one here, Avik. So there are various things, right? I started first on my earlier question. On my earlier answer, I said we are also looking at, pulse and how engaged employees are. Now, riding that is how happy are they or how healthy are they, right? Now, on a base, we would say, okay, does everybody get their flu shots? Okay. So one part of the duty of care is to go and make sure that happens. Then your policies, for example, let's say your leave policy or your sick leave policy, is providing for people for that period of sickness. Like out here in my organization, there is no cap. Sick leave works on an honor system. So you decide, once you're well and come back to work, and the organization understands that. Okay. Then, what when life changes? Okay, addressing typically the situation today, the pandemic. People have been sick. People have, apart from job loss, they have seen death and grief. So you need to have a very strong employee assistance program where the employees are confident that they can go to a place and share what challenges that they are facing in an environment that is truly private, confidential, and their manager or anybody does not know what they're going through. Okay, so employee assistance programs need to be promoted a lot, because people are not going through just this, but even when the waters are calm, there are other storms in life. There is marital, familial, and all kinds of challenges that we face, and therefore employee assistance program is very important. Last but not least is privacy, respect, and confidentiality. You need to create that ecosystem for people to come out and find solutions to their challenges, because in today's environment, in an Indian home, you have 3 generations typically, okay? And everybody is running for the same resources, be it the Wi-Fi bandwidth, the internet, the TV, or the computer, or the couch, and things like that. And conflicts happen in families first. Conflicts are also resolved by families first, okay? Because that's a great condition, so to call it. So it's important that we recognize that and provide people that option to go and seek professional help or any kind of help that is possible, apart from talking to their immediate supervisors, managers, and colleagues. Thank you.
Would also like to get your comments, Sapon, on this.
So actually good to see. See, Augustus talking about a very large organization and how it is to be done in a very structured manner. And possibly, let me share something, because we being a smaller organization, uh, possibly we have little more liberty to bring little more personal touch to it, and I think that way it helps us even more. So a couple of things which we were doing a bit, and we really accelerated that during the COVID times. So one, we being mindful organization, we have made sure that our people are adopting mindfulness in one way or the other, in a very very basic simple ways. We we this time we also tried and see if they can start adopting it along with their family members, because this is a great time to adopt this, and not only sitting and doing some mindfulness practice, but how it can be adopted in very different ways, in different activities. I mean, whether you are cooking food together or possibly you are reading book, in which ways it can be adopted. And we feel that it can bring a great and it has helped our people a lot in coping up with the situation. Second, very indirect way, but we realize that micromanagement is actually one of the biggest health hazard in the organizations, because I remember of a study where there was a two rats who were put together, and there was one which was more like a bullying type of rat, and after a couple of months being together, the other rat actually his hippocampus shrinked. Can you believe that? I mean, and hippocampus is important for our memory and a lot of important cognitive brain functions, and that can happen to many other parts of the brain. The same thing happens when a bullying boss or a micromanaging boss is sitting on your head. Okay, and we have been very particular about it, and especially during the COVID times, you tend to, because you are working remotely, so as managers, people would tend to do little more micromanagement because they can't see people on a day-to-day basis. And this is what we made sure that we actively discourage. That doesn't happen. Rather, we have a policy of reverse managing, where we say we will not follow up, managers will not follow up. Rather, the team should become the reverse followers, and they should say that this is not happening and why you not approve that. So we very strongly follow the reverse managing philosophy, and that we we became even more conscious and more active during the COVID times.
Thank you, Sapan. Aditi, the next question to you. As you advise organizations on employee well-being solutions, very pertinent in the pandemic times. What do you think some of the challenges that organizations are facing, and what sort of advice are you actually providing them? How are you actually helping them tide over this crisis?
Yeah, yes, that's a good question. And there's two parts to this question. The first one is that the issue that they're facing, right? The issue they're facing is that a lot of organizations don't really know what's going on with the people. They're very siloed in a way. So you have the leadership with their values and other things. This is our organization, these are our core values, but nobody's actually doing anything that aligns with the core values. And I think the people are really struggling because of that. The employees are struggling. What I see is as the greatest challenge right now is for the managers who are stuck in between the senior leadership and their teams. And they have to sort of take the pressure from above, but they're also taking the pressure from below. And somehow everyone's looking at them to say, handle your team. Everybody's freaking out in your team, or they're not feeling well, or they're not producing. And so there's this pressure for middle management to sort of step up and do whatever they can, but they're human and they need that support and they don't know where to go for that support. So I think that's one of the most challenging things that I see around me world over, not just here, but everywhere in the world. I'm seeing a lot of middle management struggling with this issue. The way in which I support companies is, of course, I bring a holistic picture to how to manage well-being, right? So I'm not looking at let's do these workshops or let's send these teams on a team building trip on an offsite or something like that. It's much more comprehensive and very close to what Augustus was talking about. But I would also add that there are three pieces here. There's the leadership that you have to have buy-in from the leadership, where they actually believe that well-being is important and not just something to pay lip service to. Then there's the environment, the physical environment, as well as the emotional environment, the psychological environment. So your physical environment is, of course, your setup, your office space, this and that. But your psychological environment is that space that Augustus was talking about, that space where people can come and be honest and speak up to their managers or seek the EAP assistance. A lot of people won't seek it because they're afraid of somehow being stigmatized, or if they call EAP, will their managers get to know, and will that somehow affect their promotions? And so this is so you have to create that safe, psychological safety is what it's called in technical terms. As you have to create that safe environment. And finally, the third piece is the individual piece, where the resilience of individual employees can be worked on through things like mindfulness and other types of exercises. And I think the common thread for all of this is just the fact that we are so isolated right now. Loneliness is a big problem. You are not alone in the sense that a lot of people around you, but loneliness is one of those things. It's an emotional experience. So you're feeling lonely despite being surrounded by a whole lot of people. And I think that is something that needs to be addressed, that's not being addressed. And that's also something that I talk to organizations about.
Thank you, Aditi. I think one of the common themes that's emerging out of the discussion is how the physical and the emotional well-being of employees is becoming more paramount. What Augustus harped on, it's right on the top of the CEO's mind, and I think what the pandemic does is probably not restrain those issues just to a point of lip service, but the company is actually taking steps to address those issues. Sapan, my question is, what steps do you think, maybe the three most important steps that you think organizations should do to invest more in human capital in these current circumstances?
So, when we talk about invest, the biggest investment, more than the time or money, is actually the attention. And attention, when I'm talking, obviously the individual attention as we talk about, but attention more in terms from the leadership and from the HR teams and from the leaders to identify the symptoms and the issues. Most of the times what happens, see, the biggest issue with any aspects related to emotional and well-being aspect is that these are so indirect, so intangible, and so hidden. I was reading a report where it says 14%, 14% employees wanted to hit out at the co-worker, but they didn't. Okay, fortunately, but they wanted to, and this itself is bad. This is hidden, but is there, and the cause was stress. Okay, and we know, the biggest cause at this point, research also shows the biggest cause of stress in people's life, unfortunately, is coming out of work. And it is so unfortunate. The workplaces should have been the sources of happiness and purpose and meaning and relationships and all that, and we are going on completely opposite direction. The first is having that awareness that it is bad. In US, $300 billion loss happens just because of stress. And for India also, figures would be similarly staggering. That awareness, that first investment needs to happen in terms of people identifying and looking at these things. And it's very easy. You just move around the workplace and you sense the energy and there's something wrong. Okay, you look at the symptoms and that there's something wrong. This is the biggest thing. This is where the beginning happens. Okay, the second investment, the first attention is this, but the second investment needs to definitely come from the leadership side. Okay, most of the initiatives die because of non-involvement of leaders. The moment leaders start speaking that language, leadership language is mimicked by the people. I mean, it's proven, it happens all the time. The more and more leaders start to talk, leaders start to convey the message that this is important, the managers below will automatically start doing that, and leaders need to invest time and again attention here to do that very consciously. And I would suggest that they should be the front runners to do that. Many of the organizations where actually leaders are coming forward and saying, I'm following this, I'm doing this, and then the whole organization follows. And the third investment, and it's a very important investment which generally gets missed out, is in champions. We have so many case studies with the programs that we have done, that we did the program and there were so many leaders who volunteered, who came forward. Some of in the construction company, somebody is going on the site at their own and taking the orientation for people. They are not asked for, they are not, they were not told, it's not there in their KRA, they're not getting anything, not possibly even recognition, but they feel so strongly, oh my god, this is something which is so good and I really want to impart that. And in every initiative you would see, we have seen across, there are at least 10 to 15% population which is in the nature of champions, who really feel great about it and you would want to take it forward. Investing in those champions, grooming those champions, rewarding those champions, and giving them that flexibility and resources so that they can take it forward, can be one of the biggest investments if organizations want to take the health, well-being, happiness forward in the organizations.
Got it. Thank you so much, Sapan. Great points. Augustus, moving over to you, you talked about those employee assistance programs that IBM had introduced over the past 1 year. Can you also tell us what were some of those programs that really helped employees?
So let me talk more from an industry perspective than just IBM perspective, since a lot of people have reached out to me and I've been to listening to them. The first thing, I suppose, on EAP is, I'll give you a very short story, okay? An incident that that happened to somebody very close to me. This person was a very productive employee, respected by the team as a leader, and then she started getting signs of fear and doubt and low confidence, in spite of her being a fairly respected leader. And every time she was either getting into a call or a meeting, she started getting panic attacks. Okay. And I saw these things, and so since the person was close to me, I was able to help in some manner. But what I saw was that this wasn't an isolated incident. The entire situation of the pandemic, the fear, the uncertainty, the job losses and all that, and as well as, how equipped are you to handle it, right? Are you skilled enough? How relevant are you going to be? Would you become redundant? A lot of fears. And I suppose the primary thing that people had to be tuned up for was that, look, go and seek assistance, go and seek therapy. There is nothing wrong with that. You will not be stigmatized. Give them the confidence that I, as your manager, would not know what you're going and speaking. So give them that thing. And don't say that I know what you're going through, because you're not going there. So that level of empathy is okay, but definitely it's uncalled for, because then you become a counselor and you're not qualified as a manager to become a counselor. So let the specialist handle it. And what are those various things that they went for was, therapy in terms of how to cope. And lastly, I found personally is that you need to build resilience in people. Because we've all been trained to face the perfect storm, and the perfect storm hit us. But what happened is that we were riding the storm, but in our own boats. Okay, same storm, different boats. So therefore, we were using our instinct, we were using our muscle memory, and whatever came to us, to ride that storm. But if we build resilience in people today, and they will be able to ride the next storm. God forbid there's something else that happens, people will be equipped. So I think all the EAP programs is about coping, it's about confidentiality, it's about privacy, and the reassurance that this is not going to be stigmatizing you, but this is going to make you a much more stronger individual to become resilient for the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Uh, do you also organize such counseling sessions for your employees in case they are extremely stressed, or they have some sort of what you refer to as panic attacks? Like, I mean, how do you deal with such problems?
See, the various well-being programs need to be there. Like, let's say it's just not financial or emotional well-being. What is the root cause? Let's say financial wellness could be a root cause. My lack of skills could be a root cause. So it's also about getting people to understand what is causing that particular disturbance in their lives. And you may just have a very broad spectrum, okay? So you would say, okay, we will look at financial wellness in terms of how you're going to be coping, how you're going to be saving, or how you're going to be borrowing, that kind of stuff. So that your stress levels could to some extent be addressed. Then drive learning, drive education, drive skilling, and give them access to the best training and skilling initiatives that are there, so that once they're able to crack a program or get a certification or a badge, that itself creates a lot of positivity within themselves and builds confidence. Okay, it's a huge endorphin fix. Then of course, get them to take certain challenges, like give them a Fitbit and say, okay, 1,000-step, 10,000-step challenge and things like that. Motivate them on social media, reward people who are completing those things, create that sense of camaraderie in various models that you can look at. Thanks.
One last question. We'll probably, after that, we'll move over to the questions from the audience, and I'll probably give each one of you probably about 30 seconds to respond before we move over to part two. Rewarding an employee at this stage also is pretty critical, I guess. How do you reward the right set of employees?
How do you define the right set of
Yeah,
employees?
exactly. Maybe Aditi, you can start, and then I'll move over to Sapan and end with Augustus.
My question really is back to you, Avik, is
Okay.
how do you define the right set of employees? Because everybody comes in with certain sets of strengths, and if you're a good enough manager, you'll be able to figure out who can contribute at what level, or to what strengths can they contribute. And rewarding everyone is essential for whatever it is that they are contributing. So I don't know that the question is so much about who are the right employees to reward.
Okay. Sapan, your take on this?
So I think rewarding, I really don't think that pandemic changes anything in terms of rewards, except that possibly our promise changes a bit. So possibly we may say that at this point of time, the efforts are high, but rewards may be less because of the constraints. But we do make a promise and we keep it to reward. And I think it's not again about the right employees, wrong employees, whom to reward. It's a matter of whether it is pandemic or not pandemic. I mean, anybody who does a good work must get rewarded. Okay, there is no doubt about it. But possibly it's a time of promises and making sure that we work towards it to make sure that we meet and fulfill those promises, and absolutely reward people who were together and who worked hard during these times. And I'm again giving the same example, that how at least an organization refunded the salary cuts that were given. It's a great beginning of making that the basic reward that you're bringing
Got
back
it.
that salary cut.
Augustus, your view?
Yeah, so Avik, I think the first reward here is recognition of that employee's contribution in a difficult market or societal scenario that we are facing today. Okay, and also we need to understand that the business is going through a very complex and competitive phase too. Okay, the business challenges are many. There is a lot of uncertainty even for the business. There is tremendous level of transformation that is happening from legacy to digital to cloud to AI. Okay, and that itself is throwing challenges at people and businesses. Finally, who is the right person? I completely agree with Aditi in terms of how do you define that. But recognition is so important. And therefore, for someone, we have to go and say, look, in spite of these tough and difficult situations, you have stood out. Okay, and go and recognize that person. When I say recognition, it doesn't stay between you and that person. Recognition happens across. Okay, so what happens is that it inspires other people also to go and take up that challenge or live up to that challenge. So that's where rewards need to go. And it's not just dollar value, it's about going and telling people, if you looked into an annual report, some of the companies, somewhere tucked away on page number 22, it would say in 8 point, people are our biggest asset. I would say you should bring it down to the first page, cover page of your annual report and put it as a banner headline saying people are your biggest asset. Okay, that's what, to me, rewards should be, recognizing the workforce as well as that individual. And finally, what do you need to happen? You need to drive innovation. You need to drive business success. You need to have that differentiator. So create that ecosystem. That's what I would suggest. Thank you.
Correct.
I'd just like to add a quick thought here.
Go ahead, Aditi.
In addition to recognition, though, I think that there are other ways to recognize. Basic recognition, if it's not followed through with other things like, for example, allowing people to maybe some time off to work on projects that are interesting to them, that's inherently motivating for them. Something like that could also be perceived as a reward, right? So you give people the opportunity to work in ways that helps them bring their strengths out. And that in itself is also kind of recognition. Verbal recognition alone is not completely sufficient. I would like to add that as well.
Fair points taken. We can move over to the questions now. Quite a few I see. The first is from Priyanka Sharma, and she asked, and this is something that we have discussed right from the beginning today, what initiatives were taken by your organization for a healthy and happy workforce? Maybe 1 point each, Augustus, Sapan, Aditi, and we'll move over to the next.
The first point I would say is workforce enablement. Enablement, like I said earlier, okay, is to make sure that the person has an ergonomic chair, has earphones, is fully equipped to be productive.
Correct.
That would be my take. And of course, that person's wellness in terms of emotional and physical well-being. Thank you.
Great. Sapan, your take, 1 point.
I would say a very conscious efforts towards the autonomy, giving a larger freedom, because anyways people are working from home and they need larger flexibility. So it is not just about working from home, but even when they're working from home, the way they are taking up the responsibility, the time of the day they work, they need a lot of flexibility and autonomy around that. So and we have actually worked towards it a lot, where we are making sure that people are given the responsibilities, but they are not bound in a particular way of working, and especially in this pandemic times.
Okay. Aditi, your take?
Yeah, hire someone, if possible, a team, if not, at least an individual to oversee the wellness efforts in the organization, because the onus cannot be on individual managers with all of the things that they have to, their deliverables and so on and so forth. This is something that they have to be trained to do. So I think hiring someone to head these initiatives is probably the first place to start.
Aditi, hang on. I'll probably direct the next question to you. It comes from Harpreet Singh, and he asks that how to use research and data to support happiness of employees.
That's a great question. I don't know if his or her organization has a people analytics team, but with using HR analytics, people analytics, it's about finding ways to create the right kinds of surveys, to collect the right kind of data, and to well-being data, for example, through engagement surveys. You can use your engagement data to do that. You can do your physical health data if you collect. You can use that as well. Things like turnover rate, employee turnover rate, how frequently do people quit, what are the reasons they give for quitting, harnessing that data to look at well-being outcomes. So there's a lot of different ways you can use data to support your well-being initiatives. And research, of course, there's plenty of wonderful material out there that one can use to even create, your well-being surveys or whatever. There are already validated measures you can use that are out there. A little bit of a search and you can get good measures that you can deliver to your employees.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Aditi. The next question is from Lakshay Kumar. Maybe Sapan, you can take this. How HR leaders can create a focused plan to deliver the changes that will enable their people to go from surviving to thriving.
Okay, so we have to really, break these into chunks, because when we say surviving to thriving, we are talking about a big attitudinal change, big psychological change inside people's mind, and again, that's not something which can happen immediately. So now, possibly bringing that piece and using the word, borrowing the word from Augustus, he used and emphasized the word resilience, and possibly, if we bring it down, that possibly your first beginning could be about resilience, and that's where possibly you may start looking at that people thrive, and for thriving they first need resilience. For resilience, what do you need? You definitely, so resilience, external situations can be very challenging, and challenges will never stop. So making sure that people are resilient is the baseline. How do you go about creating resilience? Again, we're talking about thriving is the next question. And again, there are many ways in which we can enhance productivity and a lot of things. And you download a software and you create a productivity hack. With any of these psychological enhancements, like the resilience or thriving we are talking about, the things are not as easy, because it's about changing the behaviors. And that's where the HR leaders, when we are talking about, and let us say we are talking about any of these changes, I would always suggest 3 steps. And possibly, I mean, this is not rocket science, very simple. The first level would be creating the awareness. And creating the awareness, if HR leader is driving this, they should make sure that they are first creating the awareness amongst the leaders, because once their buy-in is there and they start propagating it, it's good. So awareness is the first stage, but they should not stop there, because most of the initiatives stop there. Like we have those lot of trainings, awareness trainings, they are great, they are motivational trainings, they are good, they are igniting the engine, they are starting the car. Okay, but starting the car is not the objective. We have to move forward, reach somewhere, and that's where the adoption comes in, and that's where most of the organizations fail. Okay, and adoption simply requires that we have such a system in place where people are doing small bit of micro practices. There are continuous follow-up which is happening, and it is being measured on a periodic basis. Having that thought in mind that this is going to be a long-term project is a baseline. It's not one-time thing. Okay, and finally is the acceleration phase. So awareness, adoption, and the acceleration phase, where you groom the champions and you take it to the next level, where you are actually making changes in your culture. We are changing in your procedures and processes.
Got it. The next question is also from Lakshay. I will probably request Augustus to take this. What are the effective ways of collecting feedback from your employees when it comes to the mental health?
I think organizations should steer clear of getting that kind of information. okay? Because it's dangerous, it's very sensitive, it's personal. So what organizations need to do is to sensitize its managers to identify signs and signals where people require some kind of help, and that they can slowly nudge them to seek professional help and guidance through the EAP program. But I would very clearly say steer off that course and don't go and ask people about their mental health and wellness. You should be able to identify signs and signals. You have a lot of tools. You have some behaviors that are pretty much evident. So use that and use your judgment, and don't become a counselor. Continue to be a boss or a friend and say, hey, look, I think it would help you to go and seek some EAP advice. For example, to build confidence, you could say, I myself have taken it at some point in time, and some people on my team have gone through something similar, and today they have turned the corner, and maybe you should look at it that way. So you've got to be collaborative, you've got to be encouraging, and you need to see those signs. Thank you.
Great. The next question is from Pranav Malhotra. I'll probably ask Aditi to take this. How to reconnect employee engagement and employee happiness?
Okay, so I'm going to give this respond to this from an academic's point of view, because it's important to understand that there is employee engagement is not really a thing. Nobody really knows what employee engagement is, right? Everyone assumes that it's one thing or another, you know, you're this, you're that. Most employee engagement efforts and research has not linked to productivity, right? It links to well-being. So, and well-being is very different from happiness. So in trying to sort of link engagement to happiness or to productivity or performance, that's actually erroneous in the first place. At best, people might have a better experience at work, but it's not something that you tie with happiness as such, right? I think if you want to look at happiness, the better way to go about it is setting realistic expectations, to understand in the first place when you hire people, or you know, when they've already come into your organization, what are their expectations from their role, from their manager, from their team. Are these expectations realistic? Are you meeting these expectations? What are the expectations from themselves as individuals? Some people come in wanting to really do the best they possibly can, work 60, 70 hours a week, and then they're really disappointed when they don't see proportional results, right? So it's all about setting those expectations and then coming to sort of a common understanding with your team, your manager, and yourself as to whether these expectations are realistic or not. How can we meet them in the best way possible?
Thank you, Aditi. We probably have the last question of this evening. This is from Priyanka Sharma once again, and she asks that discuss about the short and long-term challenges HR leaders face in reinventing their employee engagement model. Sapan, you want to have a crack at this?
Okay, so let me take this when we say employee engagement in a little larger level, as Aditi also mentioned. Okay, and we talk about engagement, well-being. We are talking about helping out our employees, you know, and it all boils down to the employee care. Okay, so I think one of the biggest initiatives that should be taken, and you know, there is always a buzzword saying every manager should be an HR manager. Okay, now it's been talked about, but very rarely it's actually being implemented anytime. But orienting managers, the line managers, functional managers, in genuinely caring about the employees. And there are two very simple things. Okay, one is patience. People think it's a waste of time to talk about some general things and emotional stuff. They need a clear orientation of when you talk those emotional aspects with people, how much the person gets engaged with you, how you as become leader become more trusted, more acceptable, how it directly gives you the larger leadership trust and respect. People need to be given proper awareness and orientation in the caring part, and real genuine care part. So this is something which is long, I don't know, long term, short term, because it has to begin and it can go on for a, definitely, or for a longish period of time. But this is one definite suggestion I would say. Every organization must begin at the, at the soonest.
Great. Thank you so much, Sapan. One last question from my side for Augustus. You talked right at the beginning of the conversation, about the emotional and the physical well-being, how important it has become. Uh, how are CHROs actually looking at this? Is it the main focus right now, at least in the near future for them?
Yes, I think this is right on the front burner, and
Hmm.
a lot of indications that you could see is, uh, that being directly uh, uh, connected to engagement and productivity. Okay. Now, I also see that there are a lot of wellness coaches who have come on. Okay, because the demand is there. Irrespective of the size of the organization, I think there is a huge demand. And as I see and speak to these wellness coaches, I'm seeing that there is a greater and greater need. And this need, of course, one is the duty of care of an employer. But again, what undergirds it? What undergirds is that the engaged employees drive productivity. Productivity drives profits. Okay, so what is right out there is that if we have to gain better market share, be the leader in our space, we have to focus on these things and work closely with our employees on this, because only then can organizations aim to be market leader or an innovator in that space they are. So therefore, it makes business sense to focus on it, not charitable. Let's be very clear about it. It
But how do you
makes
differentiate
business
wellness
sense.
from happiness? Sorry to cut you, but how do you differentiate wellness from happiness?
I think, Aditi said, happiness is a very temporal state. Okay, and wellness is more all-encompassing. Like I said, it could be physical, emotional, financial, and so many other things. Okay, and therefore they're pretty much apart in my head, at least. Thanks.
Just to, can I add one point? I
Please
think,
go ahead, Sapan.
yeah, and I think what Augustus mentioned so sharply about the productivity and profits, and organizations are realizing that happiness is directly contributing to the productivity and profits. There is also one more evolution that is happening at a very slow pace, and I hope that grows a larger, because here the assumption is people are for business. So people are there to care for business. There is also a thought coming in where it is not that people are for business. Actually, business is for people. Business exists for people. And more this thought is getting deeper into the organizations, and the employee first and customer second, and those type of thoughts which are coming in, where we say that we exist for our people and then people take care of everything else. When this larger thought starts coming in, the consequential benefits of productivity, profits, and everything else is definitely going to happen. Yeah, so really feel that business, people are not for business and business exists for people philosophy would go at a larger front.
Thank you, Sapan. I think we've reached the end of our questions from the audience. Let me just check. Yes, I think we have no more questions, but it's been a great session. Let me tell you, I think all of you must have enjoyed it, and so did I, and I hope the audience did, with these pretty, let's say, pretty intriguing, I mean, sets of questions that we discussed. Some of the major points that come out really, that comes to my mind, is the emotional and the physical well-being, what Aditi talks about, maintaining a positive attitude. I mean, you can't, of course, be happy all the time, but yet, you take your problems on the chin and probably try and move on. Thank you, everybody. It's been it's been great connecting to all three of you, and we will probably meet sooner or later maybe in a similar platform. Till then, goodbye and have a great evening.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very
Thanks, Abhi.
much.
Great
Pleasure.
talking to you.
Thank you.
Nice to
Take
be
care.
among friends. Take care. Stay
Absolutely.
safe. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Aditi. Thanks, Aditi. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Thank you all. Bye.